Good morning. I'm going to turn things over to the Assistant Chief.
Good morning. Assistant Chief Nick Cook, COOK. Discuss some details that I can release from last night's officer-involved shooting. On June 22nd, shortly around 6:52 p.m., officers located a stolen vehicle located in a business parking lot near the intersection of 41st Street and Carolyn Avenue. Officers attempted to go out with that vehicle, and the male driver fled on foot from the vehicle. While fleeing, he produced a knife, which he shortly discarded after producing this knife. And shortly after that, he produced a handgun as he was running. This resulted from the threat. The officer discharged his firearm. The suspect was not hit at that time. The suspect then discarded his firearm and continued to flee on foot into the middle of 41st Street, just off of Carolyn Avenue. The suspect then was apprehended by an officer, and a struggle continued in the middle of 41st Street, resulted in an officer discharging their taser to bring him under control. The suspect was taken into custody. No further injuries were accrued to the suspect or officers at the time of this incident. Due to the circumstances of a firearm being discharged by one of our officers, we turned the investigation over to the South Dakota Department of Criminal Investigation. The parties involved, the male driver was identified as Asa. It's A-S-A, Wooden Knife, W-O-O-D-E-N-K-N-I-F-E. He's a 31-year-old Sioux Falls resident. He was charged with aggravated assault on law enforcement, possession of a firearm by a former violent offender, possession of a stolen vehicle, and he also had several local warrants. There was a front seat passenger in the vehicle that did not flee. She was identified as 30-year-old Erica, E-R-I-K-A, Marie, M-A-R-I-E, Brugier, B-R-U-G-U-I-E-R, out of Sioux Falls also. She was charged as being a parole absconder. So again, like I said, the investigation was turned over to the South Dakota Department of Criminal Investigation, so there isn't a lot of details I can release at this time. If there's any questions, I can certainly try and field them.
Were there any damage to buildings from the shot?
We did not find any damage to any buildings or vehicles from the shots.
Just to clarify, the male individual did not shoot at officers?
Not that we know of, no.
How many shots were fired by the officer?
A total of those I do not have at this time. The details DCI will release later.
And is the officer on any kind of
Yep,
administrative leave?
Yep, and standard officers put on a paid administrative leave.
And what led to this engagement?
The vehicle they were following was stolen. So they went out with the vehicle, the driver fled on foot. Anything further?
Is the stolen vehicle tied to anything else from any kind of?
You know, I don't know if it was connected to any other crimes at the time, just that it was a lodged or a registered stolen vehicle in our county.
And how many years has the officer been with the police department so far?
Not off the top of my head, I wouldn't know that.
Where was the vehicle stolen?
It was registered out of Minnehaha County, so I assume it was stolen locally.
You mentioned that he had been charged with a violent offense. Would you be able to disclose what that was?
Yeah, I do not have his criminal history with me at this time, just that at the time that they DCI filed the charges that he must have had a violent offense on his history. Anything further? Turn back to Sam. Thank you.
Okay. One thing I was going to touch on is during that investigation after the officer-involved shooting took place, there was a lot of crime scene up. There were police cars, and we had a lot of police officers that were working that scene, and we had a car that drove through the police tape. It actually started in the parking lot, one of the businesses. The car went through the police tape. A lot of police officers were yelling at him to stop, and he ended up stopping just about right in the middle of the crime scene that we had from the shooting. Turns out that that guy had quite a few warrants from Iowa and was intoxicated, so he was arrested for DWI and those warrants. Do you want his name?
Yes, please.
And that was probably about 10:30, I think, is about the time frame. His last name is Rome, R-O-M-E. First is Joshua, J-O-S-H-U-A. Middle is Rydell, R-Y-D-E-L-L, and he's 39 from Sioux Falls. DWI first, and it was actually DWI first, no insurance, littering, and reckless driving were the charges.
Do you know what the outstanding charges were for Milo?
I don't think it said. I think it just said that he had like 3 or 4 different. Let me see if it mentions in the report. It says alcohol-related offenses, but doesn't give any other detail than that.
So was he like, he ran through it at a high rate of speed, or were officers close by?
Yeah, he was going at a fairly high rate of speed. I don't have an estimate, but the officers noted that he was going at a high rate of speed through the parking lot. Obviously, there's a lot of people that were out. The crime scene tape is designed to keep people back, obviously to protect the area so officers can focus on what they're doing. So that's the reason with the reckless driving charges, just driving through at a high rate of speed when we had people around, and obviously he wasn't paying attention.
Could you speak to how crossing the crime tape could have potentially interfered with the investigation that was underway?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, just I keep talking about the crime tape, but the crime tape is up. I mean, there's barriers that were up in different areas. We have police cars that are blocking roads, and also all that's designed to keep people back, to let the officers have time in a safe environment to be able to process the scene. And having somebody come into that area, it really, I don't think it did in this case, but there's always a chance that it could affect the crime scene. We're looking where different objects are, where they're found. We try to document that as best we can, and then kind of piece things together. And certainly every crime is different, but having somebody come into that crime scene, and if they disrupted stuff, it could have an impact on the investigation. I don't think it did in this one. There's surveillance cameras that helped capture it and a lot of witnesses, and so everything kind of seems I guess straightforward as far as that goes, but the potential is there, and so it's not difficult. I mean, we try to make it as obvious as possible where crime scenes are so people don't come into that, and obviously he just wasn't paying attention.
I didn't hear you mention any charges for entering an active crime scene. Is that a crime in and of itself?
No, I don't think we have anything specific. I don't think there's any state laws about entering into a crime scene. If somebody does something like that, the officers would be giving them direction and telling them they need to stay out of that, and then there could be some obstruction or interfering charges that would result of that. So there's nothing specific to a crime scene, but there's certainly other charges that could come of that if somebody enters a crime scene.
Were drones used during the processing of the shooting incident?
Yes, there was some information. Anytime our drones, we have a policy, anytime our drones or unmanned aircraft system are used, that we always notify the public. And that's just an effort to be transparent, so we're not doing anything secret. Every time we use the UAS or the drones, we make an announcement out there. A lot of the time what they've done, probably most frequently, is to assist with mapping, and so that's just giving a different perspective. We have people with the crime lab that would take pictures on the ground, but to have that elevated view of things really gives sometimes it can give a better or different perspective than you get on the ground. Okay, not much on the log. The aggravated assaults, one of them was a domestic, the other was actually a late report, but was a fight between a couple of guys. The burglaries, those are duplicate reports, but it was a business that was entered, had several purses taken from inside of it. Counterfeiting was a fake 100 found at a casino. The disorderlies were trespassings, family offenses, or protection order violations. Larcenies, most of those are shoplifting, a few other random things. Narcotics, no big quantities. The robbery, that was early this morning. That was at a convenience store near 25th in Minnesota. We had a guy walk in, showed a gun, took cash and left, so no arrests on that. There is some surveillance video, and so we'll be working on getting copies of that. Sex offense was a report, nothing big from the simple assaults, nothing suspicious with the unattended death, and the one vandalism was a car that was damaged. Anything else? Okay, thanks.